Hi, I'm James Middleton. Here I am on the Hello Shoot. And to introduce my dogs, we have Isla, Zulu, Nala, Mabel, Luna, and Inca.
Hi, my name's Ros Powell. I'm here with Hello magazine today, and with me is a very special guest, James Middleton. And we're here to talk about pets, specifically dogs, for Hello's special pet issue. You're going to inform our readers as to the fantasticness that are our gorgeous canine companions. So can we just sort of set the scene a bit? I mean, we're in this beautiful countryside in Berkshire, in Bucklebury. Where are we going to walk to and why?
Well, I thought we'd meet up with some of my sheep, which are Herdwicks, which are here over in Bucklebury, and then I thought we'd take some of the wonderful footpaths that West Berkshire has to offer, and walk over to my house, which is just up the road, and enjoy this lovely sunny day.
I know, we're spoilt, aren't we, with this weather? So you grew up around here, didn't you?
Yeah, so I've grown up. I was born in Reading Hospital, and have lived around here for most of my life. I moved to London for around 11 years. I was in London, and then during COVID, was in an unfortunate position where we had lost out on a deal on a house. The chain collapsed because of the uncertainty around that time, and ended up moving in with mum and dad. And for us, fortunately, a farm very close by came up for sale, and we jumped on the opportunity to move down to the country.
And this is you and Alizee?
Yeah, that's with my wife and I. And at the time we weren't married. We were engaged, but we hadn't had a chance to. Well, COVID sort of got in the way of our attempts to get married, but eventually we did get married, but after we moved in together.
Yeah. So special place for lots of different reasons.
Yes, no, it is a very special place, and I think we can see ourselves as being very lucky to have the beauty of West Berkshire.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough to have around 7 pubs within a mile radius. So,
very lucky.
So it's a fantastic pub crawl opportunity as well.
So this is a well-trodden route for you. This is somewhere where you'll come with your 6 dogs.
Yes, yeah, no. So we are sort of out with the dogs daily, but on the weekends we go on extended sort of hikes around here, and it normally involves stopping off at one of the pubs along the way, but also it's when it's soaking wet and you've got sort of knee height in mud, or a day like today where you're bathed in sunshine. It's still lovely.
So tell me, James, why 6 dogs? Because that would seem quite excessive,
excessive
to most
yeah, no,
people.
fair enough. I think that is,
Some might say greedy.
Yeah. No, I've got 4 spaniels, and the 4 spaniels are related to my dog Ella, who I attribute to saving my life when I had clinical depression. Yeah. And the memoir, and so to speak, I wrote about Meet Ella, the dog who saved my life, and I over the years had a couple of litters with her, and want to keep her line going, and so I've got 4 spaniels ranging from 14 down to 4, and 2 golden retrievers. Our first family dog was a dog called Tilly, who was a golden retriever, and they are related to Mabel and Isla. She's related to them. So
the 2 retrievers,
Well, Mabel is Isla's mother.
Right. Oh, okay.
So there's a connection in that respect.
I like the way the sheep are following it.
Yeah. Well, I still have the bucket, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
It's empty, but they are convinced that there's something in it.
And the dogs are amazing around them as well. They're so very well behaved. I have to say, I'm impressed.
No, well, it's something that particularly around here we have a lot of sheep, but they've grown up with sheep and being surrounded by them, so I've made sure that they are extremely respectful and under control when they're around sheep. So that's something that I'm very conscious about.
So I can imagine it's quite a lively household then at home with 6 dogs, and your son, who is how old now?
So Inigo is 1.5 now. So he is yes. It's when we get up in the morning, trying to get him fed, trying to feed the 6 dogs, and then off the nursery is a challenge. But it's wonderful. No, I think it's having 6 dogs isn't like having one dog times 6. There's elements of them which they work together and they enjoy having.
Oh yeah, that's interesting.
Having each other's company, so that there's less stimulation is needed because they've got each other to sort of stimulate them each other. But
do you think people with lots of children say the same?
Well, no, possibly yes, because I can't say that having just one, but I know that by the time you get a bit older, then mum or dad can say to you, can you just watch your brother or sister for a little bit, or that sort of thing. And friends who've got children now who are a little bit older, I know will help, or they're delighted to help with the babies up to the point maybe that it comes to nappy changing.
So what's Inigo like with the dogs? How can you...
Well, I think he spent the first year of his life thinking he was a dog, being on all fours, which was quite entertaining to watch.
Did he bark?
His first word was woof.
Oh no!
No, it wasn't. No, he very much is. He absolutely loves the dogs, and particularly Isla, who's the youngest dog we have. She's a golden retriever, and he is just in absolute love with her. Every morning he goes in and he sort of asks to go and see the dogs, so we go and see them all and say good morning, and he just hugs, because him standing up right now and Isla sitting down, they're the same head height, and he just goes and puts his arm around her neck and just squeezes and gives her a big hug, and she sort of gives a lick on his face, normally cleaning up some yogurt that might be still around his mouth after breakfast. But no, I'm delighted that the dogs are, have accepted him, because we didn't push him into it too much.
He didn't have a choice though, did he?
He didn't have a choice, but
fair.
we didn't. I was just really conscious about, I want him to love dogs for what they are, and I think that's just something that he's got to build that relationship and bond with. He can't necessarily just absorb my love for dogs and animals, but he shouts at the chickens and goes cuckoo when the chickens go past, and knows what noise a cow makes and a sheep make. Oh, there you go. There's one.
So he's a good animal.
So he loves chatting to the animals and seeing the dogs sort of running about. He gets the giggles when the dogs start charging around the place.
Oh, very sweet. But he could have been absolutely terrified of them, I guess, couldn't he?
Well, yes, I think that's why I was wanting to take it slow, because as I said, it's something that I wanted him to grow to love and appreciate, rather than it being a forced thing that is upon him. But no, he shares many of my loves, which are tractors and sheep and dogs and...
Oh, tractors is a given, really, isn't it? I mean, I've yet to meet a young boy who doesn't like a tractor.
No, on the lane we have a few tractors go past every day, and he's sort of there, and he can hear them coming, and he shouts tractor, which is delightful. But it could be seen as a bit of an obsession, whether it's a healthy one or not. Well, I think it is a healthy one.
What about Alizee? I mean, I know Ella was crucial in playing Cupid to get you two together, because she introduced you both.
Yeah, no, very much. Yeah.
But I just wonder what would have happened had she said, "I don't like dogs."
Well, I don't think I'll be married to somebody called Alizee. That's not a given. I think it was really her. Ella walked over to her and she was giving.
This was in a pub or a restaurant.
It was in a bar, yes.
Yeah.
And Ella wandered over, and I suddenly saw sort of Ella on her back being tickled by this sort of beautiful blonde lady, and I went over to make sure that she wasn't bothering her, and she thought that I was the waiter. So continued to order her drinks. Well, no, I was holding a menu because I was sort of wanting to get my drink as well. So anyway, so but she was sort of giving Ella all the attention and sort of barely registered me. So I sort of figured it was a given that she already loved dogs at that point. Whereas I think if she said, yes, can you remove your dog, I don't think I'd have been brave enough to have written a note to her asking if she wanted to go for a drink. So,
But she also must love having lots of dogs as well.
Yes, well, I think she has. What's been lovely is over the years she's built her own relationship with the dogs. So Ella obviously and Zulu and Inca and Luna were, and Mabel to an extent was Mabel was still a pup when we first met, so had a bit of influence over her upbringing, and it meant that they have a seriously strong bond now, which is fantastic to see. and the same with Isla, and the same with Nala. So you know, she's built her own relationship with the dogs, and often goes out for walks or goes out for a run with the dogs, and I think that's what's fantastic, is that they're just another member of the family. They're not an accessory to our lives, they are our lives, and that's what makes them really, really unique.
I'm wondering, I don't know if this is a strange question, but do you think, having been a dog owner and a dog lover, it sort of helped you become a father? In terms of being responsible for another living being and
No, I think it goes all the way through to childhood, in the sense of, you know, often children have hamsters and guinea pigs, and it helps them learn with coping with loss and understanding around death, and you know, but I certainly think that there's elements of dogs being in our lives which are, you know, hugely beneficial, to the point that, you know, I personally think that dogs should be on prescription for doctors to help with a variety of different things. You know, I work with the charity Pets as Therapy, and the benefits that dogs can provide by going into hospitals and schools and you know, retirement homes, and the benefits that they can bring to people's lives is huge. And you know, we're really grateful that we've got the dogs, you know, at home, and we're fortunate enough to do so, and I appreciate that so many people aren't. So being able to extend your dogs out to a wider audience of people who aren't as fortunate perhaps as you adds another layer of how wonderful having dogs are, because you get to see your dog putting a smile on other people's face, which is really magical.
What about in terms of your sort of your nurturing qualities that you obviously developed through? Yeah, well,
I've become less. I'm less bothered by changing nappies, because I've cleaned up fair amount of poo over the years. No, I think there's elements of having to have patience and knowing that you've got to go at their pace, not you know, you can't rush anything, and you've got to adapt your life. You know, having a dog in your life versus not is different, but. It doesn't mean I miss anything outside of my life if I didn't have a dog. It's just I've adapted our lives to include them into as much as we can possibly do. And I'd say it's similar with parenting, that I often joke with my wife Alizee, saying, what did we do before we had Inigo? Because what did we do with all that time we had? But you know, I don't want that time back, because I love what we're doing so much. And it's just like anything in life, you evolve, you change, and things progress, and you've got to, you know, look back at the things that you did in the past and enjoy them for the memories that they were, and not try and chase them to exist today, because I think that's a wasted bit of energy in my view.
I was thinking it's also about responsibility, isn't it? Having responsibility and taking responsibility, and that's you know, some people are horrified by the thought of that, you know, both for children and dogs, but it's being able to embrace that responsibility, I think.
No, of course, no. I mean, the responsibility of you know, getting up in the morning and feeding a dog, and the discipline that you have around taking it out, whether it's raining or snowing, and you know, or miserably cold. But equally, you know, those are the mornings I sometimes love the most, when you've had to, you know, get outside and you've gone for maybe just even a 20-minute walk, and you come back and you're cold, but you get, you know, your cup of tea inside you, and actually it's a wonderful way to start the day. And there's so many health benefits. I personally believe that having a dog in your life is cheaper than the average UK gym membership, because but ultimately it's better for your health, because you know, you can choose if you want to go to the gym, and if you're you know, if you don't want to go, you don't go, whereas you don't have a choice about taking your dog outside and that sort of thing. And so no, I think looking at a dog as a you know, to help look after you is something that I hugely vouch for. And
both physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that, you know, I just try to promote as much as possible is giving back to your dog as much as they give you, and that's was the inspiration, you know, with why I went into dog food. I personally think the best thing you can do for a dog is to feed them the best possible diet, and I recognised that with Ella. I wanted to give back to her. I saw how much she was helping me through my sort of challenges with depression, and I remember looking at her being like, you know, how can I give back to you? And it's just a fraction of what she gave to me. She sort of devoted her entire life to following me and giving me unconditional love, no matter what mood I came back at home from or I was in, or she would look at me with the same eyes being like, I'm just happy you're here with me.
Yeah, you've talked a lot about companionship of dogs. Can you tell me a bit about that? Well, maybe for the person that's never owned a dog or had a dog, what does that feel like to have this creature that you're, as we said, responsible for, but also is giving so much in return?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I still don't think words will ever be able to translate the love that you feel from a dog and that relationship that you build. And the fantastic thing is that every person's dog is as good as anybody else's, and they're as loved as no. But you can talk about behaviour versus the love that they give. They give as much love as is possible, and they don't sit and sort of are annoyed with you because you went for a shorter walk yesterday than you did today.
They don't bear grudges.
No, they wake up and every day and they live in the moment. They're not chasing tomorrow. Yeah. They might be chasing the ball, but they're not chasing the things that they can't control. And therefore, there are elements that if you allow yourself to absorb how the dog sees life, then I think it definitely helps your life. And they are a responsibility, but the best things in life do bear responsibilities, but they're good responsibilities because they reflect they in turn have a positive effect in your life, and I think dogs to that extent are, so wonderful. And they're whether you have a pup, have one from a puppy, or whether you adopt, there are fantastic resources out there to help sort of make the most out of the dog and bring them into the fold of your life and make them work for your life. And there's huge amounts in the right sort of dog, the breed, and the levels of responsibility. But most people I know who have now got a dog in their life that didn't before just said, why did I wait this long? Yeah. And so there's always a reason why, but my work is this and my work is that. And, there's an opportunity to change your work and maybe find flexibility. And
they can introduce those different possibilities. So in terms of our any listener out there who's sort of weighing up the pros and cons, I mean, physically, they get you out of the house, you get lots of exercise, it takes you into the sunshine, so you're getting lots of vitamin D. It gives you the feeling of being alive when you're out in the cold and the wet and the rain and the snow. You meet new people. You get chatting.
They're the world's most sociable places that you can sociable creatures, because if you go for a walk in the park, or in the countryside or wherever you might be, I would guarantee 9 out of 10 people you come across, you'll start a conversation with around the dog. Whereas if you're out by yourself, there's less. I don't know. Maybe it's a human trait that we're just less able to start up a conveation like that. But when the dog's involved,
there's a common thread. There's a common love. Isn't
exactly.
There?
And there's a question, or look, dogs are hard work, and I don't think anybody should go into it without having done the research and using the resources. And there are, also if you're looking at adopting, there's the, with the likes of the Dogs Trust, who I'm an ambassador for, you can become a foster parent, and you can experience having a dog in your home in parts of your life, but not have the committed responsibility saying that this is the forever home. And it's a wonderful way of helping out the charity, but also in helping out the dogs, and meaning that those dogs don't end up going into the into the centres, of which is really traumatic for dogs. They stay in a home environment, and it can sometimes just be for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and you have the opportunity to experience having dogs in your life, but without the absolute commitment. And a lot of the time, it ends up with the dog staying with you, because you feel such a wonderful bond with it and you realise that you can't do without it.
So we've talked about the mental health benefits of having a dog, and you talked about the part Ella played in terms of helping you when you suffered clinical depression a few years back. Can you tell us a bit about that in terms of how you were feeling and what she did to help you through this really dark time?
Well, I think she was my reason to get up in the morning. I realised that when you have depression, you can there's not much light on the horizon for you, and you can feel sorry for yourself. But actually then when there's a dog that looks at you and says, you know, come on, I need to go for a walk, or I want my breakfast, or Ella on a couple of occasions, you know, would come up with my walking boot in her mouth, and I'll take it as a sign, okay, we'll go for a walk. And it would break a moment of deep despair. Like there were thought chains that were just on a downward spiral, and she would just come and nudge my hand or trip me up as I was pacing around, not able to settle, and break that sort of moment and break just the negative spiral. And she would just interrupt it, and you know, you just pat her head, and that endorphin that's released by the benefits of her just in the eye, and you look into their eyes, and it was so comforting. And
it sounds very profound. It sounds like a really
and I think she just knew when I was agitated, so she would have that ability to be you know, sensitive to knowing how to approach me when I was not in the right place, or just, you know, if I couldn't settle, she wouldn't settle. And you know, moments of I would try and use her as an excuse not to go to my therapy sessions, because I'd turn up with a dog, and actually the receptionist would open the door being like, oh, you've brought her, fantastic. And I was like hoping it was being my excuse not to be able to go in. And
was it a real comfort for you then to be able to take her to therapy?
Well, I think there's two parts to it. So being able to take her I was able to have something that was, you know, she never left my side, you know, my hands never left her, and you know, while I was able to talk about really challenging things. And my therapist also said, you know, when you're at home, practice saying some things you're not telling me or you're scared to say out loud.
Oh, to her?
Tell Ella, because she's not going to answer back. She's not going to be able to tell anybody else. And so you can therefore tell your darkest and most sort of painful sort of secrets that you're scared about saying out loud. And a thought being said out loud is different to a thought in your head.
Absolutely.
And you're able to start to help process, you know, how you really feel. And
so Ella became the therapist, because obviously the role of the therapist is to be non-judgmental and empathic, Ella was to listen.
She never judged, and she was never able to say, you know, oh, don't be ridiculous, just, you know, just sneer up, you know, just cheer up, don't worry about this, or don't worry about that. What do you have to be depressed about? You know, the things that you fear that people might say to you, she never said.
Which are really unhelpful.
Which don't help, and also we're, you know, humans are able just to judge, you know, tiny facial expressions say 1,000 words, and yet actually when you are with a dog, they just sort of look at you, and if you say their name, they always prick up and think, oh, you know, almost looking at you, are you about to give me a treat? Or you said my name, what have I done wrong? And it's just very comforting.
So did you practice that with her? Did you practice, as you said,
when I was living in London by myself, I was, you know, I'd often find myself pacing around. I was, you know, anxiety was making me sort of agitated, and I couldn't settle. And then, you know, but also it was stopping me from sleeping. So I was exhausted yet agitated, and that combination just meant that I was restless. And as a result, Ella was up with me in the middle of the night, and we would often just, I put a coat on and some shoes, and we'd go for a walk in the middle of the night. And she would love it. And then by the time we got back, she would end up having, you know, she was then tired, and I, you know, had some fresh air and was able to get some sleep. So there's, you
could almost feel the sort of chemical imbalance in your body sort of shifting and changing, and
also, and it got to the point where I wasn't eating. I was, you know, struggling to eat, and that's when I realised for Ella how much benefit there is from a good healthy diet. So I started to make food for me and for her, and now that's sort of transpired into James and Ella, which is our award-winning dog food.
Part of her legacy as well.
Well, it keeps her legacy alive, which is wonderful. So you go into the likes of Waitrose and Sainsbury's and various stores around London and online, and what's wonderful is that I can still see pictures of her pretty much every day, and I say her name every day through the name of the brand, and my hope is that she'll stay around. Well, her legacy will outlive me, and that's I think would be a wonderful wonderful legacy for her to have.
And you've said that she's your spiritual guide.
But yes, people often say, you know, is there that one dog? And 100%, I think there is in life that one dog, and at that time, I don't think it's difficult to exactly say. It was just Ella was there at that time for me when I really needed her, and that's incredible things about dogs, is that they are there when you need them, and I will never be able to replace her, nor do I want to replace her, because I love her just as she was, and I'm so fortunate for the time that I had with her. Of course, I would love to have spent more time, but then in some ways, perhaps if dogs lived longer in our lives, would our relationship with them be different?
That's interesting. We'd have fewer relationships with other dogs.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's different ways of looking at it. And I think that, you know, it is the hardest thing is a dog being so ingrained in your life, and they actually become part of your life. You know, they spend almost every waking hour, and more so than children. Children grow up to become more independent and more self-reliant, and whereas the dog will, from the day they come home to the day that they move on, are as reliant on you as the first day to the last day. And that means that they are breathing the same air as you in your house. They are sharing the same smells and home comforts, and so they are every day becoming a little bit more of you. Yeah. And you a little bit more of them. Yeah. And that's
you morph into each other.
Yeah, and as I said, with children or other people, you have different relationships with different people, whereas dogs tend to have very much the relationship with you and your family. They don't sort of have 250 friends on Facebook that they sort of have a chat with or might meet up for a drink. They're
not that shallow, are they?
No, exactly. they just have one or two best friends, and they are the ones that sort of, you know, feed them and live with you and are part of the same family that they're within as well. Yeah.
So James, we're now in the grounds on the land of your farm.
Yep.
Here in Bucklebury. How many acres did you say it had again?
We have about 30 acres here that is a mix up of small little wildflower meadows and woodland and that sort of thing. So it's we're very lucky, and this is where the sheep sort of spend a lot of the winter, and then now it's warming up a bit. They've moved on to some other fields, and then we let it grow out for wildflower.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's idyllic, actually. And your parents live very nearby?
Mum and Dad are about 5 minutes up the road, which is lovely, because they, we see lots of them, and it was definitely a test during lockdown when we were living with them, and you know how Alizee would get on with the in-laws being so close, but actually they've forged a really great sort of relationship and friendship. So she's delighted that Granny and Grandpa are around the corner, which we're very fortunate to have.
And I think, doesn't Pippa live nearby as well?
Actually, all of us are within 30 minutes of each other,
That's
pretty much.
fantastic.
So Pippa and James are about 20 minutes away, and Catherine and William are around 30 minutes away. So
Wow. How often do you get to meet up then as a family?
I mean, we're a close family, as you know, and I think we're fortunate that we see lots of each other, and my parents play a good role in getting us all together in that respect.
So we were talking earlier about Tilly, your dog that you
yes,
and you've named
Tilly,
your tractor.
Yeah, so Tilly was our first family dog, and it was one of those sad things that she came into the family life as I was leaving to head off to boarding school.
How old were you then?
I was about 12 or 13, and actually for my 18th birthday, I was given a tractor. I was offered either a Peugeot 206 or a tractor, and I took the tractor, and it's a 1950s McCormick International, and
that means nothing to me.
It doesn't mean a lot to many people, but those that know they're wonderful British-made tractors from the time, and as a 18th birthday present, it's something that I knew I'd never sort of, it essentially will become Inigo's in time, and it wasn't in a particularly good state, so I've had sort of immense satisfaction over the years in restoring Tilly, and it was one of those things that as I was restoring my own mental health, I felt like I was restoring Tilly back to her former self. And once I'd finished, I decided that to name it after Tilly, and tilling being a farming activity that you do in the fields, and so figured that actually it's an appropriate name for the tractor. And so she's my pride and joy, and does work. So when we bring the hay, she'll do the tedding, and it's great fun to be out and about in her. But no, I think I look after Tilly more than I do my own car. So
got your priorities sorted.
Exactly.
Yeah. So back to Tilly the dog. So you were 13, and that was the first time you had a dog.
Well, it's a family. She was very much a family dog, but I did take it upon the responsibility to call her my dog.
Oh, okay. And how did everyone else feel about that?
Well, I think they knew that it was inevitable that I'd claim her as my own. Okay. But no, Tilly was my first sort of, having spent most of my childhood, looking after or walking other people's dogs, to have suddenly a dog in our own family was so incredible. And I remember even then that, coming back from school and being homesick or struggling as I did a bit at school with a high level of competition and being dyslexic and being diagnosed with ADD, I was just not, achieving the levels that were perhaps expected of me. And so I came back sort of feeling like no one understood me, but the person that did was Tilly. And so I would sort of, tell her all of my secrets, the girls that I fancied, or the problems that I was having, and she was very honourable and kept all those secrets to herself. But it was.
So you're actually practicing what your therapist told you.
Yeah, I didn't realise it at the time, and actually, I think that's what was so amazing, and I think that's what influenced me massively with Ella was changing my approach and in how I saw dogs, in the sense that I wanted to give back to them. They give us so much, so how can we give back to them? And they don't really ask for much in return. And that sort of makes it even more special that to be able to give back to them and know that they are happy and healthy is so rewarding.
I'm curious about the family dynamic, in that you claim Tilly as your own. How did that go down with your sisters? I mean, was it a bit like, James is getting his own way again?
No, they were at boarding school themselves or at university, so I think they knew that my love for dogs was inevitable, that I would claim her as my own. But she was. But you were the youngest, weren't you? I was the youngest.
So were you indulged as the youngest?
I wouldn't say I was indulged. I was, there are pros and cons of being the youngest. I think the pros being that, well, you do get away with quite a lot, but the cons are that, I jokingly always say that I had three mothers growing up. So I had my mother and my two sisters who were mothering figures to me. But I was very fortunate. We had a fantastic childhood, and they included me in everything that they did and still do. And we forged, we have sibling relationships and friendships too, which is, all being in our, me being in my late 30s, and to still have that friendship is we're very fortunate for that.
Yeah. Well, it takes work as well, though, doesn't it? It doesn't just happen.
Yeah, no, I know. I think we've been brought up by my family to, know that you can't just take family for granted, and we work hard at making sure that, we do keep ourselves. You don't get to choose your family, and you can choose your friends, but I don't think you can give up on your family like you can sometimes with your friends.
Now, you've given two of your dogs to Catherine, haven't you? First Lupo, and then now Orla, and Pippa has Rafa.
Yes, yeah.
So how does that work? Do you all spend loads of time together with your dogs, and do the dogs get on?
We see each other from time to time with the dogs, but no, I wouldn't necessarily. Wherever they go, they bring the dogs with them, and it's the same for me. So no, I see lots of Rafa, and I see lots of Orla, which is lovely.
Yeah, but do you feel? Have you given dogs away to other people that you haven't known, that's not in the?
No, I'm fortunate that all of the dogs that all the pups that have left me have gone to homes that I get regular sort of updates from, and pictures.
Yeah,
they're not all as local as the family dogs, but no, I know that all the dogs give 100% of themselves to those families that they now live with, and give the same benefits that my dogs give me and my family, and that's what's wonderful to see, is that the dogs sort of, you know, do shape themselves a little bit to your life, and you shape yourself a little bit to their lives, and that's what creates such unique and strong relationships.
Would you say Catherine and Pippa are as passionate about dogs as you?
I think they have. I think anybody, you know, I'd say I'm on another scale of passionate for my dogs, but it doesn't mean I love them any more than they love their dogs.
No.
I think, you know, I'm certainly, you know, wanting, you know, I've made it my mission to give back to my dogs and help other like-minded people do the same in decisions that they make, and it's, you know, which is why it influenced me to start a dog food company, because diet being the best thing that you can give for them, but equally it's that element of you know, I put a lot in, and people often ask me questions about how do you get your dog to do this, or how are you getting your dog to do that. So I enjoy sharing information, which I do often on blogs and on social media.
William marrying into the family, presumably again it was like with Alizee, he had to like dogs to become
Oh, well, I think
welcomed by the Middleton clan.
I think he had a long love of dogs. He had a dog growing up called Widgeon, and she was his black lab, and I think he had a very strong relationship with her, and so knew the powers of what dogs can do.
What about the corgis? Did he?
I don't know, to be honest. I haven't really chatted to him about the corgis, if I'm being honest.
Oh, I'm surprised. Did you meet them?
No, but I think people have relationships with their dogs that are unique, and you know, I'm you know, we're all aware that the Queen had a fantastic relationship with her dogs, and it's you know, something that I was fortunate enough to have conversations with her about her dogs.
Oh yes, I remember you saying.
You know, and she's, you know, was really knowledgeable about the spaniel, which I didn't know, and actually she had her own line of spaniels herself, which is fantastic to hear.
Oh, I didn't know that. Obviously, the hardest thing about owning a dog is losing them. I know we touched on that a bit earlier, and I know Catherine lost Lupo before you lost Ella, and I just wondered if that was helpful in that. Was it something that you were able to talk about? Were you?
I think losing a dog is such a challenge, and particularly, you know, in Lupo's case, it was perhaps before his time.
Yeah, because he was young, wasn't he?
And Zulu here being his brother, but I think you know, everyone's method of processing grief is different. But I certainly know that, you know, that any dog who, you know, is in our lives, it is the worst and most painful moment when they do leave, and I don't know, I having spoken to a lot of people about it, there's this sort of a variety of emotions, but one of them feeling guilt, and it's a weird one to feel, but actually it's because you sort of do recognise how much they've given, and they are so loyal, and they are such an incredible part to your life that can bring so much sort of goodwill and happiness, and the benefits from an emotional and a physical side.
I think guilt is a very common emotion when it comes to bereavement and grief. Actually, it's something that people feel.
Well, I think you
strongly,
enter into memories that you sort of aren't there on the forefront every day, but sort of once you know that they can't really be visited again, you're not creating any more memories, so you only have the past to delve into, and that can sometimes, you know,
sort of rake over it, and maybe
exactly, and you know, with the loss of Ella, you know, she was 15. I couldn't ask any more from her, and so I was fortunate that she had lived for, you know, a fantastic, you know, 15 for a Cocker Spaniel is a really good innings, and it would be selfish of me to have wanted more from her. So, you know, through the tears, I was, you know, she had set me up for life. She had introduced me to my wife at the time that she passed away. We didn't know it, but 2 weeks later we found out that Alizee was pregnant.
Right, yeah.
And so I know that the eyes that she looked at me saying, "You don't know this yet, but you're going to be fine," you know, and that was when I started writing Meet Ella, the dog who saved my life, because there was two reasons. One is because I, you know, wanted to process that loss, but the other, and my, you know, how much she had helped me through challenging times. But the other was because Inigo would never meet her, and I wanted Inigo to, you know, be able to in the future read everything there is to know about this dog. So much so that she he feels that he knew her, because she was so instrumental in the reason why he's around.
Yeah.
And so that was my sort of reasonings for putting down this sort of memoir, a shared memoir between the 15 or so years that we shared together. And
helps make sense of things as well, doesn't it?
Well, I think writing down, in particular with my depression and various things, writing down how you feel helps you process your thoughts, and they you don't ever have to make them public or share, but for me it was I feel at the time when I first spoke publicly about my mental health, it was at the time when Catherine and William had their Heads Together campaign, and there was actually an amazing amount of information that was helping me, and I felt, well, I could be in a position where I could help others, and that is a really amazing thing to hear when people come in and say to you, thank you for sharing, because it's helped me understand myself, or on behalf of a family or a relative, and recognizing that the challenge comes from both sides. When you love someone so much and you see them struggling, it can be really difficult to communicate with them. So that my family, I struggled to speak to them at the time, because it was something that was they knew me better than I knew myself in some respects. So they did have the answers, but it was difficult to hear those answers from them. I had to figure it out myself, and with the therapist. So, and then when the timing was right, they got involved, and I'm very fortunate they were patient and willing and to help me through that. And
I guess as well, with William and Catherine setting up the Heads Together, you felt confident that they were going to understand and be empathic and not. And I mean, the other thing with mental health, of course, is that there's there can be such a shame attached to it as well.
I think at the time in particular, it's definitely getting better, and I think there's a huge amount of people who talk about it, and it's becoming part of our everyday conversations, as opposed to it being something that you tucked away and try to hide from. For at the time, I understood depression as I had my own stigmatism around depression. I think, well, what do I have? So privileged. What do I have to be depressed about? And
guilt,
exactly. And whereas I think someone sort of explained it to me, and it resonated as being a cancer of the mind. It's not. It's something that is taking control of you, and it's not necessarily how you feel. It makes you have an absence of feelings, and
you feel invaded by something almost.
And you, like you would if you had a broken bone or an injury to the sort of your physical body, and if I think at the time, but if somebody saw you with a broken arm or hobbling, you'd say, "Are you okay? How can we help? Let me help you with that." Whereas I think in my mind, and there is an element of stigmatism. Whereas if you say, so my mind is broken. I'm not in a good place. It's almost people would turn away and run the opposite direction. So by talking about it, it creates it to be everybody has mental health, whether you admit to it or not. Everybody has it. Everybody has physical health, and it's really important that we look after it. And part of looking after ourselves is having support from others as well.
Sort of linked to that, in terms of losing a dog and the sadness and the pain that you go through when you do you think as a society we're accepting that a bit more than we may once have done, in terms of people recognise that grief for a dog is a real.
I know, and I think there is now. I was reading in the papers not so long ago that now people are able to have it's recognised as taking leave for bereavement of your dog or your animal, your pet. And I think
I did when my dog Baxter died last year. I think I definitely took a.
And it is in many ways, from my own experience, more challenging to lose a dog than it is, a family member, in the respect that it's a different relationship. But actually, Ella was very much part of me and my life, and it was a relationship that I had uniquely with her. Whereas, with a grandparent or a friend, there's lots of different other elements of it that is, and it's hugely tragic to lose someone. As I'm not comparing apples to apples. It's more that actually that sense of loss can be significantly greater because there's a more complex perhaps relationship
Yeah.
than just what's on the surface. And so I think it's great that recognition is there, and also, you know, the encouragement for workplaces. You were just saying that how Hello magazine now allow dogs into the offices, which is fantastic, because, you know, they increase productivity. There's there are so many benefits for dogs being in lots of different environments, from workplaces to schools to hospitals, and I think we're only just touching the surface of the incredible healing powers that dogs can have. There's the incredible courtroom dogs I've been reading about that go and help children relay stories that are traumatic, but they are.
What if they're having to testify?
In court. There's incredible water rescue dogs that you've got, the Newfoundlands that are on the beaches and in Cornwall or in Devon, doing beach rescue. You've got the mountain dogs, search and rescue up in some of the mountain ranges, and the medical detection dogs who are able to sniff out cancers, and hearing dogs. You've got for guide dogs for the blind. You've got
and you've just got daft dogs.
You have daft dogs, but daft dogs have as much of a necessity in life that every other dog has, and they have a character, and that's what's so wonderful, is that these characters can come through in lots of different ways.
As ambassador of Dogs Trust, obviously you're biased, but why would you encourage someone to adopt a rescue dog?
I think rescue dogs can be, they need you, and whereas a puppy is looking for a home, and but rescue dogs are often there not through their own fault, and I think that a big part that I play, and try to encourage is with the Dogs Trust is responsible dog ownership and understanding how to train. You can't just expect a dog to turn up fully trained. You need to put time and effort in. You have to have patience and try to learn to understand the dog. So for rescuing, it's over and beyond the sort of just having a puppy. It's another dynamic to a relationship that and I always say this, that dogs, we often think that we're saving dogs, but actually what you'll probably find is you save the dog initially, but they'll end up saving you, and I think that's something that we haven't yet rescued a dog, but we try to relay and practice.
Are you going to? Are you planning to? Take a
100%. I think when the timing's right, we will certainly look to rescue. I visit the Newbury Dogs Trust round the corner relatively frequently, and there's always one dog that I see there that's like, oh, maybe, okay. But no, I think with the setup that we have at the moment, it's not the right time for us, and that's the thing. It's not necessarily, for me, it's responsible breeding, and making sure that the dogs that we breed go to the right homes, and that's. That a lot of dogs wouldn't end up in the homes if there were more responsible breeders. So it's something that I take very seriously, and try to educate as many people as possible about making the right decisions when they do come to choosing a dog.
I think people like a rescue dog as well, because so I adopted Wolfie after interviewing you last time at the Dogs Trust. So thank you for leading me to
You're
him.
welcome.
But whenever he's he's a puppy, so he gets away with murder anyway. But I mean, if you actually say he's a puppy, he's a German Shepherd cross, we don't know what he's crossed with, because he's a rescue dog, and you can see people's melting. They're
The thing is, dogs are.
So it's quite a good get-out clause for anybody.
Yes. No, dogs are. They are very. As I said, they need us, and they are our responsibility to make sure that things happen. And often they end up in homes when it's not their fault. Most of the time it's not their fault, and that's why to work with such an incredible charity, and they do such. They take animal rescue to another level, and the rehoming programs. And I was fortunate enough to open one of their newest centres in Cardiff, and it was an incredible infrastructure. And they don't just take one model and that's how it should be done. They've you walk in there, and the first thing you don't hear is any barking. You know, I remember going to a kennels where you almost had to put on ear defenders because it was just, but it was dogs stressing other dogs out, and then it creates this habit, which means that then the rehoming becomes more challenging.
Exactly, yeah.
And actually they've you know, worked over the years and learnt the best ways, and these kennels are silent, and they you know, create more homely environments, so they're not just these square boxes. They have, you know, through donations there are comforts that are in the kennels, and actually that can increase and speed up because they know that actually it's so important that you know, the longer a dog stays in a rescue centre, then the longer they will end up sort of probably being there. So the quicker they can get that turnaround, which where this fostering really helps, because they can actually sort of rehome a dog before it ever visits a centre, and things like that are so, you know, innovative about the way the charity works, and ultimately, you know, putting dogs first, and that's where, you know, I think I'm a big advocate for that, and will continue to do so.
So James, when's the next dog then, do you think?
I jokingly said once that, you know, it'll either be a four-legged or two-legged thing. So
that as well.
I think it's still in
when
I
and
don't know.
how are your family?
We will see. We will see.
expanded?
No, I'm 6 dogs at the moment is wonderful. You know, they range from 14 to 2 in ages. So you know, we have a good spread, and you know, right now our lives are pretty busy. Running after Inigo.
So no immediate plans to.
Well, no, I think there's you know, I don't want to say one way or another, or commit myself to something that I'll be held to. So, yeah,
probably sensible. One more question, actually. Do your dogs get Christmas presents?
100%, yes. No, they. But I'm a huge fan of the humanisation of dogs, but there is an absolute line that, you know, I feel is often. It can often be crossed. You know, I got very sad last year when I actually saw chocolate Easter eggs being advertised for dogs. Now, chocolate being so poisonous for dogs, and when you looked on the back, it was just oils and fats, and there was actually no chocolate in there. But the fact that the front of the box said chocolate Easter
really
egg
misleading
for dog
is
because, you know, it's just somebody at a glance that might not have done their research and thinking, oh, they're selling it. Why can't I just give my dog some chocolate? And so I think that's taking it way too far, and actually what the dog would have loved. And it is that aspect of who are you buying it for? Are you buying it for you because you get the satisfaction of giving it to your dog, or actually if you want to give your dog a present, a raw egg would have just been the best possible thing.
Is that what your dogs get then?
So they get at Easter they get a raw egg, or on Pancake Day, you know, we make them a dog-friendly pancake mixture, and no, in at Christmas they certainly get looked after, and you know, I think we all feel like we probably put on a bit of weight over Easter, over Christmas, sorry, and
the dogs included.
And the dogs included, and you know, I think they certainly are part of the family, and are, yeah.
They're saying, "Take me for a walk."
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, that's the often thing. You know, the things that make them happy are not physical items necessarily. It's having time with you, and you giving time and energy back into them, and that sometimes is what they really want, and a good healthy diet.
Thank you, James. It's been lovely speaking to you, and hopefully one of our listeners will be contacting the Dogs Trust post haste.
No, exactly. No, well, I think, you know, they have a wealth of information, and you know, are always great at helping guiding you into making the right decision, and you know, actually in some ways they are rescuing a dog is easier than you know, finding a puppy, because they have so much information that they're willing to share and help make the decision.
You know what you're getting
with you, and support you through making that decision, and also afterwards they help with so many aspects of introducing the dog back at home, which many breeders don't help with, and sometimes, you know, as I said at the beginning, dogs aren't, you know, aren't an accessory in your life. They're part of your life, and sometimes the breed that you might love the look of is completely the wrong breed for you to bring into your life, because that breed just won't work. Whereas they will help you find the suitable dog that and with the right temperament to suit the environment that you live in. And so I'd highly recommend, you know, anybody to jump onto the internet and go and have a look at your local Dogs Trust Centre, and and get in touch and see who they have in residence.
So would I.